Scarcity. Ooh, that is a scary word. There we go. Scary word. So what are some words you think of when you hear the word scarcity? You can just shout them out. Not enough. Lack, hunger. Yeah. What's up? High demand. Yeah, a lot of those things. So we are going to talk about something called the scarcity mindset. And we're going to go ahead and get into a definition. So, scarcity mindset is the belief that there is only so much. There are limited resources, and someone else's gain means your loss. Scarcity mindset. So this is a term that's often talked about in sociology, economics, to characterize behaviors of people who are experiencing some real or perceived lack of resources. And this produces this kind of tunnel vision, so to speak. And there's less of an emphasis on long-term goals or priorities. So with this in mind, we're going to discuss this when it comes to organizations and the implications of that mindset on professional communities, and particularly tech and artistic communities, and ways to overcome this mindset. So, before we get into scarcity mindset, let's examine some of the symptoms of this. So sometimes you might have a scarcity mindset. You're stingy. So you may hesitate to share your tricks or tips with people, or your approaches to problem solving for the fear that someone's going to take them. Or you may want to be the expert. You're jelly. So you find yourself jealous of other people and what they have. And you might have a real difficulty of actually being happy for people and their success. You're negative. You find everything that's wrong, and you only focus on shortcomings of yourself and the people around you. You're greedy, so you don't share recognition, credit, power, or profit, even with the people that maybe have helped you get that win. And you insecure and low-key paranoid. You're always thinking about what someone else is getting, and like, what if they get a raise? That means that, and I don't get one. That means that they're like more valuable, and I'm not, right? You make up things. But here's the kicker: we are all of these things. Yes, you. Yes, me. We're stingy. We're jelly. You're insecure. You're paranoid. You're negative, and you're greedy. But I want you to think about this. Take a minute to reflect. Where do you find yourself caught? Have you encountered these feelings recently? And I want you to think about the beliefs that are associated with this mindset that you may have. So I'll give you an example. Maybe, you're single and one of your friends has gotten engaged. And with every engagement or marriage, you think to yourself, there goes another one. Another good guy, girl, or indie that's just off the market. I can't get one. Or maybe there's a person that's interested in your company, and you've been holding it down as the best fill in the blank at insert company, and you are not trying to get knocked off of your throne right now, okay? So think about these, and how have your beliefs actually impacted your actions? And think about how your actions have actually impacted your outcomes, how you show up, and even how you feel about yourself. And you can take a minute to jot it down if you want to. And I started thinking, like, why do we do this, right? Like, it seems really shitty, right? Like, you're jealous of people and you don't want to share your ideas. Why do we do this? Why? Why, Pastor? It's so funny to me. Why? Well, it's because we've been socialized. This is how we socialize in every environment we've actually engaged in. You think about it. Many of the games you learned to play had winners and losers. And in school, cooperation was disincentivized, right? If you cooperated, no one would know who the best was. And it's weird. We know we do this stuff. We know it's problematic. And I thought there has to be an explanation for this. There has to be some way to model why humans make the kind of decisions that they make, especially in systems like, businesses or our communities. And reflecting on this, I remembered a phrase that I heard quite often growing up, and that is, you gotta learn how to play the game. How many of you have heard this, right? Like, everybody's dad's just like, you gotta learn how to play the game. You're like, what fucking game? What game? I don't know what the game is. I never knew what it meant. I thought maybe it meant like being like cutthroat or something. But I actually discovered maybe there's something to this, right? Maybe something that can help us understand the meaning behind this. And this led me to thinking about and learning about game theory. So I'm not a game theory expert. I just find these things very, very fascinating. And they actually have some models that help us understand how humans behave in systems and situations with other people. And one of the common models of that is prisoner's dilemma. How many of you have heard of this? Many of you probably have. If you study psychology, you probably heard of it, so we'll get into that. So let's take a look at it. You and a friend robbed a bank. Crazy. And you both get arrested as suspects, and you get placed in solitary confinement. So the prosecutors don't have enough information to actually, enough evidence to actually convict either one of you. So they offer you all like a bargain to kind of tease out a confession. And that is what's represented here. So I'll break it down a little bit. So you are in pink here, right? And so you have to make a decision without knowing what your accomplice is going to do, right? You can't talk to them. So you need to figure out the best thing for you to do based on your accomplice's possible actions. So you see here, if your accomplice holds out, and you hold out too, you both cooperate, you'll both spend 1 year in jail. Not too bad. But if you decide to rat them out, you spend no time in jail, and they go away for 4 years. So given this, what's the best course of action for you, given how much time you spend in jail? Rat them out, right? It behooves you to rat them out. And then you have to consider, okay, so what if they rat you out? Well, you got to weigh your options again, right? So if you hold out, you'll spend 4 years in jail, and they'll serve no time. But if you hold out, you both serve 2 years, but at least it's now, 4 years, and they won't get off scot-free because they also were a part of this crime too. And the same thing for your opponent, or your accomplice is considering the same things. So what you have here is a Nash equilibrium. And this basically occurs when there is no incentive to deviate from your initial strategy. So I'll describe that here. So because you see here, no matter what your accomplice decides to do, you are better off ratting them out, whether they hold out or rat you out, because spending 0 years in jail is better than spending 1 year, right? And spending 2 years is better than spending 4. And the same goes for your accomplice. And so you have this Nash equilibrium here because it's most rational for both of you to rat each other out. But both players actually would have ended up being in a better place because you only would have spent 1 year in jail. But there's always this temptation, right, to screw over your opponent. And this is how we play games. We play to win. And this demonstrates that rational human beings will almost always make decisions that make them better off than someone else. And so you think about this, how this plays out in the real world. So now we can talk about it in the context of bonuses or raises at work, right? So there's more to be gained overall here. If you both work on the project together, you get $3, if they get $3, it's $6 altogether, that's great, right? But then there are other folks who will say stuff like, I'd rather work on my own. I'll take all the credit and the money, and I'll be the one who looks cool. And so knowing that system that you're in, you'll say, well, you know what? I guess if that dynamic exists, then I'll go ahead and say to myself that I'm gonna do the same. I'm gonna work on my own, get my own money, and you can do what you want. But because both of you made this decision, you're both basically acting like self-interested assholes, right? You only get $1 each, and you both had to do a bunch of work you could have done with somebody else, and you don't have as much money. Ha! Joke's on you. So you see, there is greater gain overall with more cooperation. And notice that I emphasize more, right? Not just blind cooperation. We'll get to that in a minute. So the game you see here was just showed, it played in isolation, right? You only had to make one choice once. We were dealing with finite systems. 2 players, the game has an end. But the game of business, it is infinite, right? It has no end, it's changing rules, known and unknown players. And to borrow some words from Simon Sinek, we are finite resources. And we have limited amount of resources and energy, and we play these games until we either lose the will to play or we run out of resources. And that often leads us to feel that scarcity even more. I can't predict what people will do. I can't figure out how things are going to change, so I'm just going to default to acting in my self-interest. But that individual act to do that scarcity mindset has the potential to have a big impact on the rest of the system you are in and the other people in it, which leads us to a conversation on game strategies. So there are non-nice and nice strategies in game theory, how you would characterize those strategies. So nice means better outcomes for everyone, and non-nice means not so great outcomes for everyone, and only one person benefits. So we'll start with the non-nice strategy. So one of those is called the grudger. And so in this game, there are cooperators and defectors, and there's points associated on the decision that you make in that moment. So the grudger starts off cooperating, but as soon as they get burned by a defector, they say, nope, I'm gonna defect you to the death. So it looks like something like this. So we got this little dialogue like, oh, you cooperate, I cooperate, this is great. We're cooperating. And then, oh, thank you for cooperating again, that was so awesome of you. And then, defector thinks of, maybe I can get a little bit more here for myself. 5 points instead of 3. And there's always this curiosity of what would happen? What could I get if I only cared for myself? And then grudger is like, oh, so you just gone after all of my cooperation, you just gone, okay, I see, I got something for you. Yeah, I'm gonna defect. And your opponent's like, well, no, I just wanted to cooperate. Like, let's cooperate again. In grudger, nope, I'm still mad. Opponent's like, oh, let me try it again. Nope, defect. No matter what your opponent does, the grudger is gonna defect. They are mad. Who has known a grudge in a grudge face? I've been that person before, right? You cooperate in goodwill. As soon as someone messes up, makes a mistake, and does you wrong, you're like, nope, never again. I'm not gonna get cheated by you. And the grudger may walk away with more, but they mostly just they're kind of terrible to be around. So maybe not the best strategy. And another not nice strategy is always defector, cheater. And they are out for number 1. Winning is, for cheater is, I get everything, nobody gets anything else. Even if that means I get less overall, right? And this is pretty straightforward, right? No matter what your opponent does, you defect. You're hella scarcity minded. They will throw you under the bus at any cost. And then you have some nice strategies. So there's one called always cooperating. No matter what, I'm always going to assume best intent. You hear it all the time. Just assume best intent. And this cooperator does that all the time. And you see here, no matter what the other person does, they go ahead and they cooperate. And what you realize here is they're always at a disadvantage, actually, because no matter what their opponent does, they cooperate. And actually, always cooperators are also destructive to teams and organizations because they don't hold people accountable. And sure, it's most optimal to cooperate if everyone else in the system is cooperating, but this is the real world. So, do any of these strategies look familiar to you? Do you have these always cooperators, right? They kind of operate on this guise of, positivity, or people that, they cheat all the time. I bet you can see this. And what are these strategies? I wonder, why do these strategies actually emerge in our fields? And this is why I think they do. We get evaluated as individuals rather than teams. So the performance is about how I did, not how the whole group did. Institutions don't take the time to create cultures of trust. The people actually don't know if they can depend on other people. So again, they act in their own interests. And feedback is weak or non-existent. So you think about folks who are always cooperators, no one's telling them that's probably not the best way to function in a business environment or in a community. And fear and scarcity, that goes without saying. And then what are the implications? Well, you have a dying ecosystem. Entrepreneurs and creatives leave the community to find more collaborators. You have brain drain. You have companies that lose really well-rounded, diverse talent. But, and I found that communities live and die by idea sharing. If you don't have that, people find other places to go. But I did realize, there's a strategy that could work. And that is tit for tat. And this is the idea that it's give or take. You scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. It's great. So tit-for-tat players, they start off cooperating. And then, they copy the strategy of their opponent. But as soon as there's a defection, tit-for-tat player says, nah, I'm going to defect too. But what this does is it teaches the other person that we don't do that here. And then the hope is that that other person gets on board. So if you look at the results here, we can play any of these strategies, but if you're looking at one that has the most collective gain, it's pretty obvious which one's the winner. The most optimal strategies overall are the nicer ones. And if you look at tit for tat, it actually represents the smallest disparity of points between the two, only a 5-point difference. So out of the strategies discussed here, tit for tat's the best. Obviously simplification, right? There are a ton of other strategies you can identify here. But the key elements of this tit for tat strategy that makes it better than the others is that it gives room for mistakes and misunderstandings and addresses them in the moment. And over time, it can actually beat out the aforementioned strategies that are less productive. More tit for tat players, the strategy actually spreads. And I thought about like, so what assumption do these nice strategies operate off of? So you can see that non-nice strategies operate off the assumption that there is not enough, which ultimately leads to less overall gain. So what assumption do these positive ones operate off? And I think it's abundance. It is literally the opposite of scarcity. Abundance is the belief that there is actually more, there is enough. So I want to talk about some ways that you can actually create abundance in your community, in your own life, and at your job, wherever you function with other people in the system. So one, get some damn sleep. Seriously, scarcity mindset is actually often driven by anxiety, exhaustion, and a lack of organization. You need sleep for executive function in your prefrontal cortex. Otherwise, you're operating off of your amygdala, which is commonly known as your reptile brain, which is responsible for fight, flight, cheat. Also, we need to just realize we're kind of garbage humans sometimes, right? We are cheaters, defectors. We act in our own interest. We don't think about other people. And before we can act in an abundant mindset, we must realize the ways we operate with a scarcity mindset. And part of this goes into being mindful. Mindfulness is simply a maintaining of a moment-to-moment awareness of your thoughts, feelings, bodily sensations, and responses to the things around you. And why is this important? Because it allows you to examine the game you are in, the game you're playing, what your strategy is, the strategy of others, and then you can make an informed decision on whether you want to continue to stay in that system and play or leave it to find a better one. And be the change. We always say, be the change you want to see. But seriously, you can actually induce these strategies. Studies have shown that when players play a tit-for-tat-like strategy, these nicer strategies, it influences the other players in the system. And it influences other people to be collaborative and aware and strategic, and really it just exposes the assholes for what they are, right? And hopefully they either get on board or they go somewhere else and be an asshole. And the negativity of a non-nice strategy, given enough tit-for-tat players, they can't exist there. And you want to see opportunity instead of failure. Instead of thinking about or dwelling on what is wrong, talk about issues in your community or your company with language of what is possible. What can I do? Teach and mentor. This is truly a practice of gratitude. And by doing this, you really honor the folks that came before you. And this really creates the most abundance, right? Because you are teaching others your knowledge, they get that, and then you're also becoming better at what you do. Abundance, there is enough. And finally, I want you to give more of what you want, give more of what you think you have, because in doing this, you are acting upon a belief that there's enough to go around, fam. Thank you. Also, I'm just going to do this because I'm rogue.
You just leave it here. That's okay.
That's my friend. Oh, yeah. That's my inspiration, Tim Hikes. Yes, he's like the reason I'm here. And I'm going to do that too. I love to show people, like the people that inspire. I don't come up with these great ideas. These are the folks that actually have inspired me and like have given me these ideas and helped me form them. So yeah, it's not just me. That's not important. We'll talk about that later.
I love the idea of breaking down people's behavior as math, and maybe this comes from you being a math teacher in the past or something. Like, what was the inspiration for that type of like breakdown when you're trying to explain people's personalities?
Yeah, so I'm a black woman in tech, right? And sometimes I feel like you have to give people tangible examples for why things happen the way they do, but this kind of harkens back to a conversation with my boyfriend. Oftentimes things will happen and I'll go, it's because I'm a black woman. And he's like, well, maybe it isn't because of that. And I'm like, you, white man from Boston, you do not know, right? But in preparing this talk, I was like, oh, that's what he means. Like, sometimes you need to pay attention to the system that you're in. And once you start looking at how people are acting, a lot of times it has nothing to do with you. It's their fears. It's what they want to get out of where they are. And then that actually gives you so much power, right? Because you can actually look at things objectively and then play that.
Right. So like, that's great. You can applaud. I mean, is it about convincing other people or is it about convincing yourself?
It's a little little bit of both, right?
Right.
Because I think it's kind of scary to walk into environments where you're the only one and you're junior and you like are kind of looking for that kind of stuff. So it was like I said, it was helpful for me to kind of learn about these things, to look at, again, like look at things from like an objective perspective. And I think once you recognize that, then you can have the conversation about bias and a lack of diversity, because you're just like, you're looking at the system for what it is. Here is how people are acting in this system, and here's what is actually happening, and like, what kind of environment is this creating? And then in recognizing that, then you can say like, and then if someone is marginalized, that's gonna impact them even more.
Right, because it doesn't negate or like trump the other. They kind of, I hate, now I can't use the word trump, I'm so sorry. He ruined a whole verb. But the, sorry. But it's like they work in concert in some ways. Like, so once you recognize one, it's just like sometimes people are just self-interested. Sometimes there's institutional racism and bias, and they sometimes work together. And like, how do you begin to differentiate those? How do you think about how you could begin to separate those and act on them? Because one, you might be able to. Which ones do you fight? Fight them all?
You said what?
Yeah, which ones do you fight? How do you fight? How do you fight them all?
There is so much power in mindfulness and being observant.
Right.
I can be the best developer in the world. I can be the coolest, like, wannabe designer. But like, when it comes down to being in a system and trying to interact with that and be successful, but then also like propagate success for other people, it really is just about like, stop freaking out. Don't look for the bad, but just observe. And then you can come up with a plan. And this is feedback that I'm getting, like, at my point in career. My friends will say to me, like, you need to be more strategic. And that isn't, and sometimes it sounds like a bad word, especially people who are impact-minded, but it isn't. It's really about how can I get to my goal of having an impact for people in a way that is true to myself, but also like strategic. Like, I'm not just doing it out of this like passion for things, but actually, no, I'm gonna play you. I see you. I know what kind of player you are, so I'm gonna work around that.
That's great. Crystal Martin, everybody.